So the reason why I wanted to present something to you is because, of course, we share some vision of economics. And also, I just published 2 books, which I'm going to present in 2021, this one, and 23, this one. And these are, in fact, the same book, but divided in 2 to make more money. No, because that's too big then. So what I'm going to present now is questions on neoliberalism and populism, and also more broader questions about how we, sorry, I want to, how we will organize the future of not only economics, but of the economy, where many important issues are raising, such as the climate transitions and things like this. First of all, First of all, what are we talking about? When I speak about neoliberalism, I think it's not clear because there are many definitions of neoliberalism. And some of you maybe believe that it's an ideology, a theory, a doctrine. Well, my focus is to explain that for me, neoliberalism can be seen as an ideology, but it's not a theory. You all know that in economics, we have like mainstream economics and heterodox economics. And mainstream economics is not neoliberalism. It can feed neoliberalism, but it's not by itself neoliberalism. For instance, if you see the Milton Friedman's economics and Friedrich Hayek economics, they are very, very different. They don't believe in the same way of doing economics. And a theory is more about understanding the world. It's a theoretical framework to understand the world, whereas the doctrine would be a consistent thinking about how we change it, how we organize it. So a doctrine is more about politics and economic policies. So Hayek and Friedman, they disagree on the theory, but they agree on what they want the economic policies be. Most of it, sometimes they have difference too. So neoliberalism, as I define here, is mostly a set of principles used in economic policies in order to organize the world. And from neoliberals believe that the world will be better if we follow these principles. Of course, there can be contradictions between neoliberals. For instance, monetary theory, like I said previously, Milton Friedman and Hayek, they disagree. For Hayek, you can have the free banking ideas that you can have competition between currencies, whereas for Friedman, this cannot work. And he believed that you need to set of rules to central banks in order to not create too much money, as you know, the Milton Friedman monetary theory. And of course, if neoliberals disagree, it means that there are different schools of thought in neoliberalism. There can be oppositions, and they can disagree on practical things. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, you can still find a few principles they agree with. And the idea here, when we try to define neoliberalism, is to find the few principles they agree on in order to understand what exactly is neoliberalism. And also, we also have to understand in which way these principles, the neoliberal principles, are different and sometimes are opposed to the principle of classical liberalism. So if we think that neoliberalism exists as a doctrine, it means that in some way they share the same principles, and in other way they differentiate from themselves, from the liberals. So what are the differences between neoliberalism and liberalism, what I would call classical liberalism? The first thing, I think maybe the most important thing that differentiates neoliberals from classical liberals is the way they conceive the market. For classical liberals, the market is a natural thing. It emerged by itself by, like Smith explains, the fact that human beings, they like to trade, to exchange. And because of this human nature, markets appear spontaneously. For neoliberals, the market is not a natural institution. It exists only if you have a formal framework that helps the market to exist. So it means that they believe that if you want a real market, you need some specific institutions, legal institutions, but other kind of maybe non-legal institutions too. And they believe that the states have a specific role in order to organize the market and make it efficient. So what is this role exactly? Well, they believe that in order to have the market, you need a certain kind of monetary stability, which means that you cannot trust gold standard. And this is, I think, one important point. The neoliberals start to think about money after the collapse of the gold exchange. So they try to understand how we can have a stable money, currency, without having the gold exchange standard, the gold standard. The second idea of neoliberals is that competition is not natural. Competition can disappear from a market. And this also explains the antitrust policy that we start to have here in America in the end of the 19th century. Some market, the oil market, for instance, in the late 19th century, there were no competition at all. Rockefeller, Standard Oil, was controlling most of the producing and trading of oil. So this is the reason why some people, researchers, thought that maybe we need to enforce competition. So another specificity of neoliberals is that they believe that you need to enforce competition. If not, you lose the ability of markets to create the price. I will discuss this later. The third aspect they all share is they believe that if you want market to survive, you need to enforce or to create or to maintain a social order. And this can mean that you give social benefits to people. And you can find this in Hayek, in Friedman. They all believe that if the market creates too much poverty, for instance, or insatisfactions, then people will vote for communist or fascist, and they will turn away from liberalism. So you need to organize a minimum social system in order for people to accept the market and its results. And at last, neoliberals, like liberals, by the way, they believe, of course, in free trade and free movement of capital. But neoliberals, think that you need to organize that. You need to implement institutions such as the World Trade Organization in order to organize free trade and not believe that free trade can itself suffice to organize the world trade. Another aspect, I think, which is important for neoliberals is that they believe in the preservation of the rule of law. This, you can find it very, very well discussed in the 1930s, especially in German neoliberalism, which is what we call order liberalism. I don't know if you know a little bit about it. They have a lot of discussion about how we don't fall into dictatorship. Of course, for order liberals, the question was to avoid fascism and Nazism. So the states must organize the market, but the states cannot replace the market, cannot intervene in the market with discretionary interventions. So what they want to prevent is that a leader would not follow the rules, would intervene and change the order of the market. The last feature that is common to neoliberals is, put this somewhere, okay, is that they believe that the role of the market is not to be a place of exchanges, but a place where the price are determined, and therefore a place of valuation of commodities. So this is also a very important difference from Smith, for instance. For Adam Smith, the role of the market is to organize exchanges. And I think this is mostly what classical liberals believe in. But and we're going to discuss about it later, for neoliberals, the market is a place of valuation. It is a place where you can decide the valuation of every good, every commodity. And this is the main rule of the market. So the market, so this is basically a figure that represents what I just explained. So I call this, of course, a temple of neoliberalism. And this temple is based on foundations, rule of law, property, security, norms, hierarchy. And then no discretionary intervention, which also means fiscal balance. And then what the state should do. The state should organize free trade. The state should maintain competition and social order. And the states and the monetary policy, especially, should organize price stability. And if you have this, perfect competition, or competition, even if it's not perfect, but the most perfect you can have as a competition, social order, price stability, and free trade, then you generate a market that is able to create a price system. And this is basically what have in common the ordo-liberal school of Walter Eken, the Austrian school, neoliberal Austrian school. I don't put Mises into this school, by the way, of Friedrich Hayek, and the Chicago School of Economics of Milton Friedman. So basically, for me, these are the three main schools of neoliberal schools. Okay, so this was important to clarify what we're talking about. But then there is something else I would like to discuss with you, which are institutions, and institutions in the neoliberal framework. So how do we define institutions? Something I understood when I read the neoliberal literature is that they thought about institutions, contradictory to mainstream economics, which, of course, you've heard about the 3 Nobel Prize winner. But for me, they don't really, they have a very simple way of understanding institutions. Whereas most of the neoliberals have a very complex and interesting way of understanding institutions. So, and this is especially true for German and Austrian scholars, Hayek especially, and ordo-liberals. It's less true for Friedman. So what are institutions? In my definition, institutions are basically a social mechanism that persists over time and coordinate individual and collective behaviors. So you have basically 3 forms of institutions: formal institutions, legal institutions, such as the state, the churches, universities, private companies. You have also informal and cultural institutions, such as ideology, belief, language, shared representation. And we can say that also we find hybrid institutions, religions, family, nations, markets. I call them hybrid because they need some formal rules, for instance, but also they do not restrain themselves to these rules. So they have, and I think in market you have the rule to organize the market, but a way the market function can also have cultural, social aspects. So the institutional nature of markets is based on its 2 main functions that are previously explained. It is a place that organizes exchanges. This is traditional rule. And it is also a place where value is defined. And I would like to add that for me, these 2 functions can sometimes be in contradictions. Something we never think about as economists is sometimes if you want the market to become a place of valuation, it means that every commodity should have a single price. It is, I would say, the single price principle. If the same commodity have 2 different prices, then there is a market dysfunction. That's what we believe as economists. But in traditional economy, sometimes it is important that the same commodity can have different prices. For instance, in traditional markets, usually you don't have a real market. You go to a merchant and you barter with the merchant in order to have the price you want. And two similar persons can go to the same merchant and have different prices depending on their ability to barter. And this is not totally absurd. It maximizes the number of exchanges. And in traditional markets, sometimes when you have less money, you can have better price when you are rich. So it means that the merchant try to maximize the exchanges. So if you have a single price system where the price is printed near the community, then the poor will not buy the product and the rich will buy it. So you have less transactions in this kind of market. So sometimes if you believe that the market is a place of exchanges, it can be in contradiction with the idea that the market is a place of valuation. So basically, the representation of neoliberals is this one. So you have the states have to organize competitive markets. These markets bring out prices. These prices produce incentives, and the incentives allow social coordination. So so you have here the institutional approach of neoliberals and the way they see the role of the market in society. Third kind of definition, populism. Populism also is a complex concept, difficult to define. By the way, when you read what political scientists think about populism, usually, most of the time, they don't define populism. They try to characterize populism. And for instance, a book that I really like of Jan Werner Müller, published in 2016, explained that the characteristic of populism is that it doesn't believe I forgot the term, doesn't believe in, not in democracy, but pluralism. Yeah, the idea that we represent the people and the other, they don't represent the people. So they want to have the monopoly on the people. So this is not a definition. It characterizes the discourse of the populism. And the fact is that populism can represent a variety of political content. You can find left-wing populism, such as Podemos in Spain or Jean-Luc Mélenchon in France. You can find, of course, right-wing populism, Trump, obviously, Berlusconi. Centrist populism, Macron, Pepe Grillo in Italy, the Five Stars movement. So the reality is when you discuss about populism, you cannot refer to the right-wing or the far-right-wing populism, but you can find common feature, and we'll discuss about this, in this group of people. So I'm going to discuss this later, but some scientists, political scientists, explain that the reason why sometimes in a country you have left-wing populism or right-wing populism is because of the relationship you have with institutions. When you distrust institutions, only you are left-wing populist. The country creates left-wing populism. And when you have a global distrust, not only institutions, but also of your neighbor and the people around you, then you move toward a right-wing populism. The thing is, how do we get something out of all this? My idea is, since we cannot define populism by just watching the political movement, we need to define populism as a state of society. So my definition is the following. Populism is a state of society characterized by the general distrust in institutions. It can be a global distrust in institutions and other things, but at least institutions people do not trust institutions anymore. So these institutions can be, of course, politicians, the press, the scientists, the university, the justice, the policeman, I don't know, anything. So when you find in a society large distrust over many institutions, then you are in a state where populism can appear as a political party. So yeah, I want to create a simple vision of populism, more simple vision of populism. Okay, now we have the definitions. I would like to discuss about Europe. Because I don't want to discuss about the United States. You already know more than I do United States, and I think you may find more interest into what's going on in Europe. And in Europe, we also have a European neoliberalism. This neoliberalism is a product of two very important major economic institutions. The first one, I think the most important one, is the single market, created or decided in 1986 with the Single European Act. And of course, a single currency, which was decided in 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty. So what are exactly these institutions and how we can say that these are neoliberal institutions? The single market is a product of, well, it has different features, but the most important feature is what we call in Europe the four freedoms. Not the same four freedoms that you have. For us, it's only economics and neoliberal freedom, which means the free internal movement of goods and services, which was already which exists previously with the common market. And then what really created the single European Act is the free internal movement of capital and labor. This is brought in Europe after 1986. But it's not only that. You also have, with the single market, the free external movement of capital. It means that you cannot regulate capital from America, China, or any other countries. There are exceptions sometimes with China, Russia, and things like this, but the general rule is free movement of capital, internal and external. Third feature is the dismantlement of national public monopols in favor of competitive market. That's something we've seen a lot in France because we used to have like public monopole for electricity production, public monopole for train, public monopole for postal services, such as you still have here in the United States, and yeah, public monopole also for telecommunications. And then, of course, competition enforcement. This was not created in 1986. It was already in the Rome Treaty of 1957, but it didn't do anything until the Single Act, where we try to enforce really the competition in Europe. So we have the Commission of Competition, and every single countries have competition authorities to maintain competition in every market. So as you can see, these are really neoliberals. I mean, they're totally in the book of the vision of neoliberalism. But then we have another institution, the single currency, and the single currency is based on two ideas: independence, total independence of ECB, sorry, sorry, it's a B, not a D, of course, a European Central Bank, and an anti-inflation mandate of the European Central Bank with no regard, no reference to growth and employment, contrary to, in the United States, the Federal Reserve. So again, really focus on price stability, competition, free trade. I didn't put here the social system, but it is also in the value of European Union, which we call it social market economy. Yeah, I think that's how it is translated into English. Okay, so now we have these institutions, and I would like to briefly explain how it affects the European economy. So before I do this, I would like to discuss about Marshallian agglomeration effects. also the geography economy of Paul Krugman. If you check the book of Marshall, I found it a 1920 edition, and this is what he explains here. When an industry has thus chosen a locality for itself, it is likely to stay there long. So great are the advantages which people following the same skills trade gets from near neighborhood to one or another. So in this, I'm not going to read everything, but Marshall has a very interesting idea. That's where he wanted to explain why manufacturing is not it is concentrated in some space, but can be absent in other place. And the idea is agglomeration effect. The more manufacturing, the more factories you have in a single territory, the more it attracts other factories. And we know that because in Europe and in any country, the more factories you have on a territory, the more territorial production factors you get. And these territorial production factors can be transport facilities, educational and research institutions, and other factories near you. This was in the text of Marshall. When you have many factories, many manufacturing around you, you're trying to discuss more about this thing. You have more access to the labor force, and it can help you to become more productive and more efficient in production. So this existed before, of course, the single market. But what we did with the single market is to allow mobile production factors to move from a country or region to another region, and from a country to a country, which is a specificity of the single market. So what happened if you have the European continent, where some regions, some countries have a lot of manufacturing industry, and other regions, because of history, because of resources, local resources, have less manufacturing industry. Well, you create a competition, but an unfair competition. With a mobile production factor, they will all go to the same place, basically the place where you have the most manufacturing industry. So what happened then is cumulative dynamics that favors rich and ancient industrial districts over less industrialized regions. I'm going to show you the map, and we'll check if it's true. But this is the theory, and the theory I did not invent. Marshallian, Paul Krugman theory. But then what happened if you have a concentration of manufacturing industries in some region in Europe and other region with no industry? But the thing is, if you have a lot of industry, manufacturing industry somewhere, these places can export more, because what you see in trade is usually you export manufacturing production, not services. So if you have imbalances in manufacturing investment, you may find in Europe imbalances in trade. And because you have imbalances in trade, you may have financial imbalances. This is for students. I think there are some students here. You remember your national account equations. And this, I love this equation. X minus M equal S minus I, which means trade balance is equal to financial balance. So when you have trade imbalances, so for instance, you don't export enough and you import a lot, so you have trade, let's say, deficit in the, you have deficit in trade balance, it means that you need to borrow money from outside. This is basically the situation of United States and France. And the contrary, when you have a surplus in your trade balance, you have a lot of savings. S is superior to I. And this is the situation of Germany, for instance. So basically what happened in the European crisis? So I would now go to the European crisis of 2009, 10 to 2015. You remember the Greece Greek issue. So this is a situation of the European continent just before the crisis. It's the current accounts balance from the average of 2005 to 2007 in the European Union. These are quotations from mainstream economists to explain that the crisis in the Eurozone is a classical debt and balance of payment crisis. And also this quotation is interesting. It says that from the Euro's launch till the crisis, there were big capital flow from Eurozone core nations like Germany, France, and Netherlands to Eurozone periphery nations like Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Greece. So these are the countries that have asked for European help between 2010 and 2013. Cyprus, Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland. What you notice here is they are all peripheral. They're all in the border of the European Union, and all they belong to the Eurozone. And what they have in common is imbalances in the account balance. I mean, they need finance from outside. So basically, you can say that you have two Europe, a core Europe, which have financing capacity, and a peripheral Europe, which have financing requirements. And what happened during the crisis is that the capital flow would not flow anymore from the core Europe to the periphery countries. So this was kind of what everything could see. But what everything could not see is the reason why there is a periphery and a core Europe. And if we believe in Marshall, we believe that something should happen in the manufacturing industry. So this map, it's not exactly the map just before the crisis. It tends to show the evolution of the manufacturing industry workforce from the year 2000, when the single market and the single currency were there in Europe, to the 2019 situation. I stopped in 2019 because, after that, there is a COVID, then there is a war in Ukraine, and so you have such conjectural factors that you cannot see the trend anymore. Maybe the trend will go back, but for now, everything is a little bit messed up, and especially in industry, in manufacturing industry. So I prefer to stop in 2019. So what you have on the map is first the idea that most countries lose manufacturing labor force. But this is normal. I mean, we all lose the manufacturing labor force because of the growth of productivity. And so the more machines you have, the less workforce you need. But some countries lost a lot, like France, United Kingdom, Portugal, Finland, Greece. And some countries did not lose much, like Germany. And one country, two countries, by the way, has increased their manufacturing workforce. These are Poland and Austria. What we can see on the map is that these countries have manufacturing gains, whereas this country around on the periphery have manufacturing losses. If you see what happened, I take another, I didn't explain why I take the workforce and not the evolution of the production index of the manufacturing sector. It's because some figures are weird in Europe, especially Ireland figure. You know that's in Ireland because of fiscal evasion. You can have in the public statistic, in the national statistic, you find some production that does not exist. So individual firms tend to locate their production for fiscal reason to Ireland and to other European countries. So that's the reason why I wanted to choose the evolution of the labor force, not the evolution of the manufacturing production. But we can still use it, and we can see, and I don't put Ireland on the map, on this graph because Ireland obviously has no meaning, okay? But some other countries have some meaning. And when you see that, it explains how the manufacturing production evolved since the crisis to 2018. And what I find very interesting is that you really can see the losers, the intermediates, and the winners in red, green, and blue. All these countries here are countries like Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain in periphery. The green countries are countries where in 2018, the manufacturing production index was still lower than in 2007, but not as low as the loser countries. And then the blue countries have a manufacturing production index that's increased from the situation, the before crisis situation. And then there is Poland. Poland is unique. Poland is a place where every factory in Europe goes because of labor cost and some facilities like harbor and things like that. So what you can see, what I like in this graph, it's show you that the idea, the Marshallian idea, that factory goes to some countries and leave other countries, and that the crisis, the European crisis, is in fact a manufacturing crisis, is kind of obvious here. So, and the situation was not solved at all. I mean, every plan we tried to implement in order to solve the problem did not work to solve the real problem, the manufacturing divergence in the European Union. And by the way, the single currency does not apply here. You don't see any influence of the euro. I mean, Poland is not in the Eurozone, neither is Sweden, neither is Czech Republic. So it doesn't affect anything. Oh, maybe there is a monetary currency issue, but you cannot see it with these maps that I just showed. Okay, so what happened when you have factories that all goes to the same territory and leave the other territories? Of course, you have more jobs in these territories, and so you have migrations. But migrations don't follow exactly the manufacturing production. If you see this map, it shows the population change through migrations in the European Union. I say through migration because, of course, you have all sorts of natural population growth, but I don't take this into account. And basically, you see that the core Europe, but the Western core Europe, really gained a lot of population through migration. And this migration is, for most of it, little more than 50% internal of the European Union. It is Europeans that goes from a country to another country. But of course, you have to add to this population the extra European population. So it's more complex. And you see that some countries are really red here. They lost almost 10% of the population because of migrations. Other countries, such as Spain, gain a lot of population, but we know it's not because of their industry of manufacturing production. It's something else. We're going to discuss about it. Some other countries like Spain also gain a lot of population. Germany, it's terrible. Germany has an increase of its population of more than 7 million in 20 years, only because of migrations. So of course, it affected people, and especially the housing price are affected because the migrants, they go to big cities where the prices are already high most of the time. So it also explains some political issues in these countries. Other countries, like these countries, like Romania or the Baltic countries, I mean, the villages disappear. I mean, you see that in these countries, population is dropping very rapidly. And in Poland, it's interesting, we're going to discuss about Poland because it's a specific country. A lot of manufacturing production, many factories go in this country, but still the population does not increase. The reason for that is that the well-educated people go away and the labor force come in. The blue collar go to Poland, especially Ukrainian So this includes Ukrainian immigration. Ukrainians go to work in the fields or in the factories. But the high educated people, they go away to Germany or France, where the wages are more important. So what you see in Poland is the country itself is becoming a country of working class country. So let's try to explain with the graphic what exactly happened in Europe by using the concept we discussed previously. So first of all, you have the neoliberal framework, which is the European single market, which allows free circulation of goods, services, capital, and labor. This also needs free trade, free competition, price stability, remember? And this has some consequences. First consequence, free movement of labor create migration of Eastern and Central Europeans. They go to the West because wages are higher, especially the well-educated people. Because of free competition and because of the single market, you have this industrial polarization and intra-European division of labor. Oh, this is English, not American English, because these books are published in London. So, and then because of the single market and the free movement of capital, you also have some strategies taken by some countries, like Ireland, but not only Ireland, which is to push on fiscal and social attractiveness in order to attract capital. Because when you are far away from the core Europe, the factory core Europe, then if you want to have factories in your territory, you need to lower taxes. You need to give investor some guarantee that the profit will be high. So in order to do this, you decrease the labor cost, you decrease taxes, and this explains, for instance, the success of Ireland. So these are the direct economic consequences of the single market, these things. But what these things create now in politics in the society? Go back to this and then try to explain the different evolutions. So you have here industrial polarization and intra-European division of labor, specialization of European countries into some activities, economic activities. Some countries like Poland specialized in low value added production. Some countries like Greece specialize in deindustrialization. So this creates the Eurozone crisis and the Troika supervision of these countries. So what happened in this country? There is institutional distrust and left-wing populism in France and Southern Europe. Left-wing populism because you don't believe that it's not a global distrust, it's an institutional distrust. You believe that the system doesn't work very well and you want to change the system. You still have hope for a best place. So you vote for Podemos or for Jean-Luc Mélenchon or for people that promise to change the system. But you trust them, they can do it. Now, what happened in Central Europe? In Central Europe, you have the migration of the highly educated people. In a book of Ivan Krastev, he explained that these are lonely revolutions. It means that they do their own revolution. They don't want to change the country. They lose faith in the country and in politicians. And so in order to improve their life, they go abroad, away to Western countries. You also have something that's happened in Poland, for instance. It's a strengthening of class and national identities. When you are a Polish, your jobs would be low-paid jobs in factories. And if you have a high education, if you go to university, well, the best thing you can do is leave the country. So the country itself is having a national identity that is like a working class identity. So it creates some kind of a vision of the world and vision of Europe and vision of Germany, who are the people you have to obey. I mean, the German firms go to Poland in order to build factories there. So your boss is a German guy. So you don't like only German because it's your boss, but also because it's German. And he also invited you previously in World War II. So here you can understand some mistrust with the European authorities. And it can explain the reason why the far-right party there is very important. You also have specificities that do not come from the single market. The bad politicians, this is Ivan Krastev talking, the European refugee crisis, and the collective anxiety due to historical crises. So what you have there in this country is the global distress, which brings out right-wing populism in these countries. Try to summarize this in this table. This is something new. I didn't write it in the book. I just invented it when I was preparing this presentation. So I would say you have 5 types of populism, depending on the situation of the countries. So first of all, the high value added manufacturing countries, Germany, Austria, Denmark, Northern Italy. So in these countries, you have a plus manufacturing activity, a lot of immigration. Type of immigration can be engineers. Of course, they're not all of them, but some high educated people come into your country, which is, of course, good for you. So what kind of populism you have? You have basically an anti-immigrant populism because of, like I say, more than 7 million people came to Germany in 20 years. Then you are Poland. Poland, you are low value added manufacturing. So you also have a lot of factories on your territory, but you don't have a high rate of immigration because your highly educated people go away, and you have a blue-collar workers type of immigration, and you have finally a national traditionalist type of populism. Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, and so on. Then what happened in Southern Europe? Southern Europe is, you remember Spain. Spain has a lot of migration, but they don't go there for their factory. They're not blue-collar workers immigration. What are they doing? Well, it is a low-skilled worker that goes to the tourism industry. So you can have high immigration when you have a lot of tourism, which is exactly the case of Spain. And but the worker you attract are low-skilled workers, and you have left-wing populism. Economic losers. This is France. France, Southern Italy, Bulgaria, Finland. Also, don't remember Finland. Finland is also a periphery country, in fact. So it's not about division between North and South Europe. If you take this, you miss Finland. Finland has a lot of deindustrialization in the country. So rate of migration, I say low is low, but also it depends. It's mixed because people don't come there for jobs, but they go there for other reasons. And you can have a sort of national populism, which is not national traditionalist. It's something else. Well, this is only hypothesis. It is hypothetical. It's only a question. I'm not sure we need to invest more about this. And then you have also the last kind of economy, the Irish economy, the fiscal attractivity. So many immigration, very rich country, and create fiscal populism. Don't raise taxes, then the jobs will go away if you do that. Okay, I don't know how much time I have. I'm afraid. Oh, okay, that's good. 20 minutes. So now I would like to discuss about the crisis of neoliberalism. And we're going to go back into the reason, the belief of neoliberalism. Remember, neoliberals believe that the market is there to organize, to create a value system, to give prices on commodities. And I think nobody explained better than Eugene Fama the idea of what is an efficient market. Of course, Eugene Fama was talking about the capital market, but we can broaden his vision to any market. This is what we explain here. The primary role of capital market is allocation of ownership of the economic capital stock. In general terms, the ideal is a market in which prices provide accurate signals for resource allocation. That is a market in which firms can make production investment decisions, or investors can choose among the securities that represent ownership of firms' activities under the assumption that security price at any time fully reflect all available information. Market in which prices always fully reflect available information is called efficient. This is exactly the neoliberal principle. The market is there to create a valuation system, and it aggregates information, but that's not the point here. The point is the role of the market is create price, and the price creates incentives. So if you believe in that, of course you believe that you need a broader market, deregulation, enlargement. You need market where you have less state intervention, so deregulation, and you need also to create a securitization system in order to have a market price for any not active in French. This is French. Securitization is a way to transform a loan into a security. That's it. So you transform something that has no price market because it's individual loan into something that has a price market, security. So securitization is the conclusion you have if you follow Fama as the role of the market is to create prices and to create incentives. So everything we've seen since the 1970s went into Fama's direction. Create greater markets that are more efficient into creating prices, into creating valuation system. But then when you think about it, the 2007 crisis is a crisis that showed the inability of the market to create a price. Let's go to the start of the crisis. You remember the crisis started in France, not in America. Of course, it was American securities, but held by French bank. This French bank was being BNP Paribas. And this is what they write in August 2007. The complete evaporation of liquidity in certain market segments. Okay, evaporation of liquidity means you have no buyers. You have nobody who wants to buy your securities. So has made impossible to value certain assets fairly, regardless of the quality of credit rating. The situation is such that it is no longer possible to value fairly the underlying US ABC assets. Oh, that's assets, what I was looking at. Okay, we were looking for. So this is clear. The subprime crisis is due to the fact that the market, the financial market, was not able to give a price to some assets. If you think about it, then there is a problem, Houston. The problem is you have, and this was also organized by neoliberals, a mark-to-market principle. When you want to see how much value a firm has, how much value, what's the fortune of Elon Musk? What is his fortune? Well, you calculate the number of share he has, multiplied by the value of the share. But if you don't have any value of the share, you don't know the property and of Elon Musk. And this exactly the same thing for any firm. So the banks during the crisis has a value, but you would not be able to know which value it owns because you don't know the value of the assets. So In this situation, you may have some banks that are into bankruptcy, but you don't know it. But you don't know if the value, because we know that these assets had a value. The value was not zero. The absence of liquidity in the market means that nobody buys the asset. If nobody buys the asset, doesn't mean the asset has no value, but the market cannot calculate the value. So what do you do in your account sheet? Do you put zero? If you put zero, every bank's collapse, and you cannot do that. So how do you escape this problem? The only way to escape this problem is to have buyers. Who can buy? The federal government. And this is exactly what they did. Sorry. The idea of escaping the crisis at this moment was to ask the federal government to buy assets and then to give price, and then you can put something, you can put a figure on the balance sheets of the banks. And there were a lot of criticism when John Paulson decided the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, because people were saying, okay, so now you're going to buy junk fund, junk assets in order to save the banks. But the thing is, what could he do? There was no escape but to buy these assets. So after some time, we decide, well, the US government or the US Federal Reserve decide to buy the assets itself. So it was not on the taxpayer, it was on money creation. This is a quantitative easing. The first quantitative easing was decided by the Federal Reserve in order to buy the assets of the subprime housing assets. Federal Reserve announced November 25, it will initiate a program to purchase the direct obligations of housing-related government-sponsored enterprise. At this point, what happened? The government and the Federal Reserve decide the price of these financial assets. For the market, because the market cannot decide the prices. Therefore, this is, I think, a very important crisis into the neoliberal framework, because the market cannot create a price, and you have to ask the Federal Reserve to decide the price. And the price will negotiate with banks in order to avoid the total bankruptcy of the US financial system. Of course, quantitative easing did not stop at this point. After this first purchase of financial assets, housing assets, the Federal Reserve continued to push out other kind of assets. These other assets were federal bonds. And it lasts for a long time. It lasts until the COVID crisis. So this is a graph that shows you the different quantitative easing policies. And this policy here in 2009 was to support the recovery plan of Barack Obama. And the recovery plan was a plan that needs a lot of money from the federal state. And the thing is, you could not pay high interest rates. So what exactly did the Federal Reserve was to lower the interest rate, the long-term interest rate, in order to make the recovery plan possible. And exactly, of course, it was exactly the same thing during the COVID quantitative easing. See, the COVID quantitative easing is more than all the previous quantitative easing policies. Right? It's tremendous. We had also a European quantitative easing, but we didn't start it in 2008 or 2009. It really started in 2015. And it helped the ECB to lower the long-term interest rates, and especially of the southern countries. So in fact, how did we escape the financial situation of Europe, the Eurozone crisis? We escaped it by asking the ECB to buy public bonds from southern countries. And this is how interest rates decreased. And it also helped Greece and Spain and other countries to finance recovery plan also during the COVID. it was consistent. It was I told you about neoliberalism, and I didn't tell you that one of the country who believe the most in neoliberalism is Germany, because of its history. Remember, ordoliberalism is a German thing. And in Germany, I mean, there are many people who believe that the central bank should not do any quantitative easing, should not buy any public bonds. And there were a lawsuit against the ECB. And the funny thing is, they won. They won on the German Supreme Court. And the German court said the European Central Bank now needs to prove its bond buying is needed. Of course, the ECB never answered to that because the ECB is above the Constitutional Court of Germany. So didn't care. This is all only to explain that neoliberalism is also very important in Europe. And many people believe that ECB cannot intervene into the market because, it's in contradiction. It's a discretionary intervention. It's not possible in the neoliberal framework. Sorry, and here, this graph shows you how it started in Europe. So until 2015, the Euro system did not buy many public bonds. Then after Greece, after we could not escape the Eurozone crisis, the ECB did whatever it cost policy. And in 2021, it held more than a third of all public goods was in the Euro system, which means in central banks of the Eurozone. Sorry. Of course, you know that the story doesn't end there. Then there was inflation after the COVID crisis. And many people believe that inflation is due to quantitative easing. I don't think at all. I mean, quantitative easing started a long way before the inflation surge. And also other, especially heterodox economics, believe that we were too strong on fighting inflation. I agree I partially agree. I mean, we know that inflation was not due to monetary causes. And for this reason, increasing interest rate was not necessary to fight inflation. But I think that what central banks did at this moment was to reduce the gap between inflation rate and interest rate. The idea was to have to not go too much into negative interest rate, real interest rate, because with high inflation, like 7–8% in America, in Germany too, if you had like interest rate at 2 or 3%, you would be like negative interest rates, which is kind of complicated. It can push bubbles and financial bubbles. But when you think about it, and remember Volcker policy in 1979 and 1980, with inflation of 10%, he brought interest rate to 20%. And we did not do that at all. I mean, we were far from these very high interest rates. The reason is that in the United States especially, but it's the same in Europe, the global debt is very high. And if you increase too much interest rates, then you have the collapse of the whole system. Volcker increased interest rate, central bank's interest rate, by 20% at this moment. And now we are in this situation here. So the global debt, this is public, private debt, is 2.5 times more important than at the Volcker time. So central banks cannot do anything. They have to prevent financial stability and to avoid, if they can, the collapse of the financial system. Okay. Five more minutes. Well, these are more questions. The question is, how can we interpret the role of the market in the valuation system? Now, heterodox economics does not believe that the role of the market is to create a valuation system. The reason why is we don't believe in the value markets create. Why? Well, read Keynes chapter 12. Keynes explained that the market are not able to know anything about the real situation of firms. So the stock price can be anything. And we cannot trust this price to be relevant for the real situation of the firm. The reason why is what the market does is not to process information, but to process belief, what people believe. And what people believe can be anything. So the speculative behavior is, in fact, not the art of having good information, but it is the art of anticipate other people's beliefs. So it means that the market cannot be efficient. And we know that it cannot be efficient because if the market was efficient, nobody would pay anything to get information because the best information would be in a market price. So we know that it is in contradiction, the hypothesis of market efficiency, with the individual utility maximization principle. This is Grossman-Stiglitz, 1980, for those who know. The fact is market behavior is driven by beliefs and by the perceptions of market operators. In other terms, markets are institutions embedded in other institutions. What I mean here is, remember institutions. The institutions are also social belief, social representation, ideology. So the market did not process information, real information. I could say that you can touch. No, of course, you can't touch information, but you understand what I mean. Markets do not process real information. They process the idea we have of information. They process our beliefs. But these beliefs are themselves institutions. So market as an institution is processing institutions. It is embedded in a social environment, which explains what we should see as a global institutional framework. So I take the neoliberal framework. No, the state is not there anymore. Yeah, because it's there. Okay, so you have the states and all the social institutions that organize the commutative markets. The commutative market brings out bring out prices. Prices produce incentives. Incentives allow social coordination. And social coordination builds social institution, generates belief, and beliefs influence commutative markets. So this is another representation. So the state is inside the figure, but it's inside social institutions, among other social institutions, also informal social institutions. So I would like to conclude to add another feature of the market, another objective of the market. Remember, a market is a place of exchange, traditional liberalism, and a place of valuation, neoliberalism. But in fact, in our institutional framework, market is also something even more important. It is a way to interrupted this. Someone speaking? Okay. It is a way to justify choices. Okay, in a society, what we learn in economics classes is that markets are driven by individual choices, self-interest. Prices go down, we buy, prices go up, we sell. But the fact is that most choices are not individual choices, they are collective choices. The choice of managers in a firm, the choice of the director of the faculty, of the university, of the president, okay, the administration. We not only make choice for ourselves, we also make choices for others, shareholders, clients, anything. So anytime we have a personal individual choice, we can do whatever we want. But when we make a choice for other people, we need to justify, to be able to justify that we did a good choice. How do we do that? We see the price on the market, and the price gives us the reason why we can justify the choice we made. So we need to establish an objective price, but it's not a question of efficiency. It's a question of legitimacy. It's a question of how can I not go to jail because I did the wrong choice? Because I did the more rational choice. See, this decision was more costly than the other decision. So I choose this first decision, and I did the right thing. So in all institutional frameworks, markets are not there to create a valuation system, neither to be a place of exchanges. Markets are there to help us to do the right choice, especially when we choose for other people. The third social objective of markets is to give social and political legitimacy to a certain balance of power. So now, what happens if markets don't work? This is the main question. What happens if the neoliberal framework pushes us to believe in market prices, but like we've seen in subprime crisis, the market do not give us a price? How do we choose? What happens if the prices do not give us the real value of things? For instance, how do we solve the climate? I'm going to discuss about this. We need to put a price on the nature, the price of climate. But how do we decide this? There is no market that creates a price of carbon emissions. So how do we do that? We can decide that some people have the right to decide the price of things. If the market can do it, Federal Reserve can decide. That's what it did. But these people, they will have such power. They can decide everything you do, not by telling you what to do, but by changing the prices. That's exactly the quantitative easing was for, is to push countries to finance and to organize recovery plans. And the question is then some people have the power to make you do things. It is not very satisfactory. There is a neo-feudal perspective. Many books I've read, and especially this legal scholar, Alain Suppiot, whose book is translated into English, so it's a big book. But it's, I think, very interesting. He says that today, with the withering away of the state and the new forms of alienation this brings, a typically feudal legal structure is re-emerging, consisting of networks of allegiance within which each person seeks the protection of someone stronger than he is, or the support of someone weaker. I don't remember now what I'm talking. Yeah, I'm talking about climate situation and resource scarcity. This is the final slide. In fact, when we see history, there were times of restraint, time where resources were scarce. This was the situation, especially during World War II, and then after, during the reconstruction of Europe. This period also was you can find this period also in the 1930s after the crisis. So in this period, the ability of market to give you the right price was not considered as good enough. So many production prices were decided by the government. And that's something we forgot. Oil price was decided into the Oval Office. The steel price was also decided into the Oval Office. The labor price, remember John Kenneth Galbraith, the new industrial states. It exactly explained how he was an advisor of Kennedy. And he explained that the reason why we had an increase of the wages as we had an increase of productivity, labor productivity, it's because there were discussions between big companies and the president. And they would increase the wages the same way the labor productivity would increase. So, and in fact, electricity prices were also driven by public policies. And most of the raw materials were also driven by public policies because the company who extract raw materials were Western companies. And they could do that because they had the support of the government. It was neo-colonization. But then, after the 1970s, certain countries decide to take over their oil companies, nationalization, and then we had the oil crisis, and then the ability of Western government to control the raw prices and the energy prices were not anymore there. So what they did is they decided to organize the market prices instead to keep power not as producer, but as consumers. But now I think we are entering into a world of restraints again, of scarcity of resources. There are some reasons for that. The first reason is the labor force is going to diminish, especially in Asia, where the capital is very important. China, for instance, will lose in the next 20 years 200 million of people as a workforce. There is a Darren Acemoglu paper yesterday, opinion paper in the New York Times that explains exactly that, but for United States. Aging of the labor force in the United States is a problem. So the ability of the global system to produce goods may decline, because if we have less labor force, we will still have a lot of population. So we will still have high needs, but less means to produce for these needs. Also, of course, we have the cost of ecological transition and decarbonization. That implies more scarcity, because we need to have less oil, less carbon energy, and more electricity, and energy will cost more. And believe me, as a French person, I can tell you that in Europe, the energy costs much more than 3 or 4 years ago. Here, you consume energy like candies, not in France anymore. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we could abandon the single price principle to maximize exchanges, but we need to change everything in this case. We cannot be able to evaluate things. We cannot be able to evaluate. Why do we need to abandon the single price principle? If you have oil that you want to preserve in order to preserve the climate and the planet, but sometimes you need to burn oil. You need to have some energy left, the few energy you can burn, the few fossil energy you can burn. You have to allocate it to certain kind of industry and not other industry. How do you do that? By having different prices from different uses. So we can enter, if you want to take seriously the climate situation, I think we cannot have the same price for oil, whatever you do with it. So this means that you cannot stuck to neoliberal framework. Neoliberal framework works in the age of abundance. It doesn't work if you have scarce resources that you need to organize differently, especially if the scarce resources can kill the climate and the planet. This is Darren Acemoglu, yesterday's paper. The era of rapid and largely unfettered globalization that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union is over. It benefits Western consumers and international corporations who got access to inexpensive labor overseas. Workers, not so much. What will replace globalization is less clear. And you can continue to read after that. What I think is interesting in this quote is that everybody is convinced that we are changing the global order, but we don't know where we go. None of us know. But we know that we need to think differently. And for instance, we need to think the market differently than we did previously. Now, I would like to end with a few questions. These questions are questions I have no answer. Well, some of them I have some clue, but some of them I have no clue. And the reason I'm here in University of Missouri, Kansas City, in the economics department, is to discuss with you and other people of the university, because I think it's not only an economics situation, economics problem. I think we need to share with other social sciences. So some questions. First question, what neoliberalism is all about? Of course, I answer to this question, but I think we can go deeper into that. I mean, I only give one answer. I'm sure there are other answers. How it affects trust and institutions both in America, Europe, and North America. I've also answered briefly to this question, but I think, again, we need to go deeper into that. No, this is a real question. Really, I don't know. And I need sociologists and anthropologists to answer to this question. What are exactly these conservative, ultra-conservative communities? How the institutional distrust that we can basically see everywhere explain the rise of far right in different countries? I try to show you that there were different kinds of populism. But what about, I mean, Trump? Sorry. Yeah, what about Trump? Trump is a very specific populism. I mean, in America, in the United States, you have full employment, low energy prices, the GDP per capita is increasing more rapidly here than anywhere in the world. So how come Trump is there? I mean, I have no answer. I don't know if you have the answer, but I think we should answer that question. I mean, I understand that in France, we have some bad situation. The price of electricity was kind of doubled in the last years. I mean, of course, people complain. We have reason. We have mass unemployment. But okay, why Trump is not French? But we have also far right. But okay, what new institutional model can emerge from the ashes of neoliberalism? If you believe that, like I do, that neoliberalism doesn't work anymore, it means that we need to implement another system. What this system will be? Okay, I try to say that maybe a neo-feudal system may arise. I'm not the only one who say that, but I think it doesn't convince me very much. Why? Because we don't see it in Western democracy. We see it in Russia, in Turkey, maybe in India, but not in France, not in America, or maybe not yet. And of course, I mean, if Trump is reelected, well, of course, that's not a question we're going to discuss, but I mean, again, it's weird. I mean, it's really, especially after January 6th. So maybe neo-feudalism is the future of America. I don't know. But I start to have difficulties to believe in it. That's why I put seriously. Maybe we'll see in a few weeks. The future of the European Union, right? Or on collapse. I mean, we are collapsing. The divergence in the European Union is increasing. It is not decreasing. So eventually it will collapse. What will happen? How we are going to manage this? I don't know. And the last question, how are we going to organize the climate and ecological transitions? Is it even possible? I'm not sure it's possible right now with the political system we have, but we have to make it possible. How, as researchers, we can help to do that. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.